Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Unkillable, Works That Never Fail. This is number 6 so far in this series. This is sort of a group, a playlist. There's a playlist. There are 5 other videos in this series that I started and that we haven't really done much with, but there is some more that we can do. And I'm going to start, I think, because one of you mentioned it. The question was, hey, Dave, when are you going to do a repertoire survey of Mendelssohn's Octet? And the answer is I'm probably never going to. And the reason I'm probably never going to is because it's unkillable. I mean, what am I going to say about Mendelssohn's Octet? It's been fabulously recorded a bazillion times. And there are many reasons for it. So let's talk about some of the reasons that make that particular masterpiece one of the most unkillable works in the repertoire. First of all, it's Mendelssohn's Octet. I mean, it's an octet. It's for 2 violins, 2 violas, no, 4 violins, 2 violas, and 2 cellos. I always get that wrong. It's 2 string quartets, effectively, worth of stuff. But they're not treated as Spohr did in his double quartets, as 2 opposed quartets. They're treated in every possible combination of strings for accompaniment and melody and everything. Everybody gets something to do. It's an amazing piece. It's really written for 8 solo strings, any one of which can take the top line, and at other times, any one of which or group of which can become accompaniments. And they sometimes play in unison and they play separately, and it may be in 8 parts or it may be in 2 parts or 1 part. It's a phenomenal piece of music. Mendelssohn was only 16 when he wrote it. It instantly became a repertory standard, which is interesting because octets are not regularly constituted ensembles. But I mean, it entered the repertoire of great chamber works the minute the ink was dry on the manuscript, and it hasn't left. And there's a really good reason that it's almost always played very, very well. First of all, the standard of chamber music performance these days is extraordinary. We all know that. I mean, these people are marvelous. But more than that, it's almost impossible to ruin, because in order to play it, you have to get 2 string quartets worth of people. What that means is that unless you have a conductor, which you usually don't, I mean, you really don't, no one is really in charge. I mean, the performance has to necessarily be some sort of negotiated average between what everybody wants to do. You've got this whole group of people, and you want them to have some basic agreement on things like tempo and whatnot, but fundamentally, there isn't going to be the kind of interpretive lopsidedness, control, if we want to call it, that could lead to a performance of outright perversity in the hands of like some truly demented, like leader type person. Sure, someone probably takes the lead and whatnot, but generally speaking, especially when you have 2 string quartets, I mean, think about that. String quartets are already a negotiation between 4 players, and they may take on the color of one particular leader, but then you put 2 of them together, or just 8 string soloists chosen effectively at random, chosen from a pool. And there's no way that you're going to have one particular ridiculous idea that's going to percolate to the surface. Maybe some do, maybe some don't. But I've heard millions of recordings of the Mendelssohn Octet and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of live performances and things. I just have never heard a bad one. It just doesn't work out that way. The other thing is that it's so interestingly and phenomenally well written for the performers that they're just totally absorbed in the act of playing the work. You lose yourself in the music. I can only say this because I'm not a string player, from talking to other people who are and who've played it. But it's one of those pieces where you're absolutely enveloped in the music while it's going on, and it just goes. You just do it. I mean, it reminds me of things I've done. I've written books where when I was done writing the book, I don't remember doing it, because you just sort of immerse yourself and go into this trance-like fog, and out it comes. And that happens. It happens sometimes with these talks. It happens with any sort of creative act. And this is one of those pieces that really does do that to the players. It's technically challenging. It's artistically worth every second of it. And it's so well written that how could you can't damage it. You really can't without doing something that's just totally gratuitously ridiculous. And as a consequence of that, you have many, many fine recordings. And so what would I say about it if I were to do a repertoire talk? I mean, that the second violin does something strange intonationally in bar 362. I mean, the differences between performances are really exercises in elevating trivia to an importance it really shouldn't have, or doesn't need to have, because there are so many fine versions of it, and everyone has preferences. And I know there may be someone who's like a Mendelssohn Octet groupie, whose incisors are dripping saliva because they heard a performance that they just detest. And there's one that's, obviously the best, and this is the best of all the others. But truthfully, I've read lots of reviews of Mendelssohn Octet performances. I've never seen anybody who has really, really passionate, strong views about how it has to be played that make one version overwhelmingly the best. I just don't see it. And for me to do a repertoire talk about it would be to, stack up a big pile of CDs and say, this is good, 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 this is good. However, this is good. I like this one. They're just not meaningful differences. It's that kind of a piece. And there are a lot of the best pieces, frankly, that are unkillable, are in chamber music because they don't have that many opportunities to go wrong. The piano sonata. One of the pieces in that section was like the Beethoven Pathetique Sonata. You may like the pianist, you may not like the pianist, but boy, is a sonata, what a surefire attraction that is. And the Mendelssohn Octet is definitely in that category. So there will be other pieces that we'll talk about in this series, but I think that's a really, really meaningful one. So go listen to it. You'll have a good time. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me, and take care.